Another one of your interests that seems to pop up in your journal articles and in the book is metals, whether that be the metals from our diet that we need, like magnesium, manganese, zinc, and also the toxic metals like aluminium and other ones like that. You've established a very interesting synergy between those and glyphosate because primarily, well, glyphosate was first used as a chelator to strip pipes of metals. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, that
Yeah.
was its first application before they knew it could kill weeds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
what are the implications of glyphosate's effect on these metals?
right. I think it's a really big problem, and both in the plants, and that's one of the things that Don Huber talked quite a bit about in his talk. And he actually showed experimentally, he was a plant expert, and he had done experiments where he had shown that when you expose the plants to the glyphosate in the soil, it disrupts the soil microbiome and it interferes with the uptake of the minerals into the plant. And he showed dramatic drops in the amount of manganese and zinc and iron and sulfur, actually. So all these things were being depleted. They weren't being taken up adequately by the plant with the glyphosate exposure compared to the one that didn't have the glyphosate. So we're getting deficiencies in all these nutrients in our foods that if they're being grown in the presence of glyphosate. Even the GMO ones, they're engineered to resist it, but that doesn't prevent the minerals from not coming in. So you get deficiencies in minerals in your food. And then maybe the worst of it is the microbiome, because glyphosate severely interferes with, for example, the supply of manganese to the lactobacillus. And lactobacillus critically depend upon manganese. They really have an interesting metabolism where manganese is very, very important for their health. And lactobacillus is really the really, really important microbe in the infant gut. When the infant's first born, it's there to help them digest their milk. It has a lot of enzymes that support the digestion of milk, and it gets clobbered by glyphosate. And it's been shown experimentally that lactobacillus and another one called bifidobacteria, which are really, really important beneficial microbes in your gut that usually grow in large amounts after the baby starts eating when it's born. Both of them are very sensitive to glyphosate, whereas other species like Clostridia and Salmonella, which are pathogens, they're much less sensitive to glyphosate. So you get overgrowth of these pathogens because the beneficial microbes are being killed off, in part because they can't get enough manganese, but also because, of course, they're being affected by that enzyme, EPSP synthase, that they possess. So that's also messing them up. But it's both the enzyme and any other proteins. They have the same problem we do with respect to glyphosate substituting willy-nilly in various proteins. So but the minerals, so the manganese was, in fact, Anthony and I wrote a whole paper on manganese. It was very interesting because we suspect that manganese ends up piling up in the liver because glyphosate is disrupting bile flow. And normally manganese binds to the bile acids and gets shipped back to the gut, bound to the bile acids, and then it gets taken up through into the lymph system in the chylomicron. The chylomicron is like this giant LDL particle that comes in. It's a way of getting fats into the system. And the chylomicron picks up those bile acids, picks up that manganese and distributes it throughout the circulation through that pathway. But that whole pathway gets clogged up because the bile acids aren't flowing. So the manganese accumulates in the liver. And then it can become toxic if it accumulates. Manganese can be both toxic and deficient at the same time. So in the liver, it's piling up, it's becoming toxic. And what happens is the liver ships it up the vagus nerve to sort of disperse it and delivers it to the brain. But it ends up concentrated in the brainstem nuclei. And manganese in the brainstem nuclei is going to give you Parkinson's disease. So there's a well-known Parkinsonism. There's a kind of a pseudo Parkinson's disease that happens with people with welders, because they're exposed to manganese, they breathe it, and the manganese travels along the olfactory nerve, gets into the brainstem and causes this Parkinsonian-like symptom. So you can get the same thing via the vagus nerve from the liver because the manganese is not being properly distributed. That's just one example. The iron is all messed up as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in fact, all the minerals probably are getting disturbed, all the +2 cations, basically, which
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of them, zinc and manganese and iron and cobalt. So, and of course, these enzymes, these minerals are essential catalysts for many different proteins, many different enzymes. excuse me, losing my voice, but they can be toxic. So the body has developed really sophisticated systems for transporting them and delivering them safely. But glyphosate messes up those systems by grabbing hold of it, and then glyphosate drops it off when it gets into an acidic environment. So that's another thing that I worry about with aluminum getting carried by two glyphosate molecules that wrap up aluminum and make it lose its positive charge. Aluminum is usually +3 charge, but two glyphosate molecules wrapped around it will make it 0 charge, make a small uncharged molecule that can easily get past the gut barrier, get past the brain barrier, and then unload it when you get into the more acidic environment of the terminal watershed of the circulation.
Yeah, it's interesting you've brought up neurodegenerative diseases, because it seems like the more and more research that's going on, the more it looks like these are diseases of protein misfolding. Which
Yes.
to me, when you've got a molecule that's making it into the brain, like glyphosate, that breaks structured water, the chance of protein misfolding goes up dramatically.
Yes.
Do you think
Yes.
this is a potential mechanism, that glyphosate's destroying the water in the brain and causing proteins to misfold?
I absolutely do. Yes, I think that's a very logical thing that could be going on.